So I'm sure that many of you will have seen that myself and party leader Paul Golding were arrested by Bedfordshire police, who imposed ridiculous bail conditions on both of us. So we then took that matter to a Magistrates Court to contest those, overly restrictive bail conditions that had been imposed on both myself and Paul. And when we went to the court, our solicitor did an absolutely fine job, advocating that actually we should be on unconditional bail, given that we have been arrested, not charged, arrested for allegedly wearing a political uniform, which is such a minor offence that when Paul Golding was convicted of this previously, he was just fined £100. And in actual fact, in the most extreme cases of, say, repeat offending, the custodial sentence for this is lower than that generally set by the magistrates, which is normally a 6-month period. This actually legislates that it's only 3 months. It is such a petty offence. So our solicitor, as I say, did a wonderful job, went into the court, presented our case to 3 laymen, 3 magistrates in the court, and went through each of the bail conditions, which I'm going to do now just to let you know how bizarre and ridiculous this day actually turned out to be. So the first of the bail conditions which he presented to the court was the issue that neither myself or Paul are able to enter Luton. So our solicitor pointed out that we are a registered political party. Myself and Paul are the deputy and leader respectively, and of course we have a membership, an active membership within the Luton area, and we should therefore be able to engage with our members who are in that area. Restricting us from an entire British town where we have a political membership without us having been charged seems extremely disproportionate. So the next bail condition that our solicitor went on to discuss is a residence order, which states that myself and Paul have to live and sleep in our respective homes. First issue here that we raise is obviously a security risk. Secondly, Paul and I often travel, the UK and in fact abroad on our political activity. So if we wanted to travel up north or to Scotland or to Wales or to Ulster and maybe stay over, which we often need to do because of the travel times, we can't do that. We have to sleep at our respective homes. So it's going to restrict our political activity. Moreover, the second part of that particular condition states that Paul and I have to make sure we make ourselves available to any police that may want to turn up at our respective homes at any time to carry out random checks. So this actually places us under house arrest, because how can one be expected to make themselves available at their property at any time when a police may want to turn up and just randomly check our property? So our solicitor quite rightly pointed out that this constitutes unlawful house arrest. We don't recognise this. We don't have this within British law. We haven't been placed on tag or on curfew. We haven't even been charged. So telling us that we must make ourselves available to the police 24 hours a day would mean we were bound to stay in our homes until we are, released or charged, whatever Bedfordshire police are planning on doing. So the last of the conditions, which is probably the most ridiculous, is that Paul and I have to, every single Saturday between 12 and 2 p.m, we have to go and report to a local police station. Now again, as a political party, a registered British political party of which myself and Paul are the leader and deputy, we carry out the majority of our political activities, as do most parties, on a Saturday. We have to report to a police station bang in the middle of a Saturday every single week without fail. Our solicitor pointed out that, it's not too difficult to see that there are actually some obnoxious restrictions being placed upon myself and Paul, and it really does throw into question Bedfordshire Police's stance on democracy. But it's really given an indication as to how petty they're willing to be. So our solicitor put forward our case, advocated that we should be on unconditional bail, given that the offence is so minor, did a superb job. They were represented by someone from the CPS, and they stood forward and said, the reason we've placed these bail conditions on Paul and Jayda is simple. If we make them report at a specific time every Saturday, they won't be able to carry out any political activity, and we don't want them to. If we make them stay at their respective homes every single night, they won't be able to travel. So they won't be able to carry out any activities in the north. They listed towns that they didn't want us to be in. So that's why they've done it. They didn't even attempt to sugarcoat it. No odds about it. This is why we've done it. We don't want the leader and deputy leader of a political party who, again, haven't been charged with anything. We don't want them carrying out any activities. So of course you can imagine, at that point, even I was surprised that they didn't try and at least dress the issue up. So we left the court whilst the magistrates said they were going to deliberate. Now, given that these are quite, it's fairly complex for, as I say, three magistrates to think over what our solicitor has said on points, specifically on points of law. And the fact that our solicitor did point out to the magistrates that, these conditions, they're kind of reflective of what you might find in a football banning order, for example. Restrictions were placed on people who had committed offences at football stadiums in the past, maybe, pitch invasion, something like that. What the police would do is they'd arrest them, they'd charge them, they'd go through the court process, they'd be convicted. After conviction, they would receive a banning order, which meant that these individuals would have to go to a police station at specific times to ensure that they didn't attend specific football matches. So our solicitor said, look, you're imposing the same conditions on these two people, leaders of a political party, but they haven't even been charged with anything. So, it seems ridiculous and overly restricted. So we expected the magistrates to be gone for a considerable amount of time. We thought we may need to get comfortable in the waiting room. No, absolutely not. I would say no more than 3 minutes passed before we were called back into that courtroom. And the magistrate, the chief magistrate, so there were two females and a gentleman who heard. She stood up and said, whilst we understand that this is a very complex case, strange given that they didn't take any time to deliberate any of the facts, she said, we do feel that these bail conditions are necessary. So gladly, in my opinion, I was very glad to see that our solicitor stood up and asked the magistrate to justify their reasons for keeping these bail conditions on us, these overtly restrictive bail conditions that were totally unnecessary and disproportionate. What I saw then was just unbelievable. This magistrate stood up. She literally said the following. The defendant, or one of the defendants, Paul Golding, previously pleaded guilty to an offence of this kind, and therefore we need these bail conditions to stay in place. Stuttering, sat back down. Unbelievable. Didn't even attempt to justify the decision. So our solicitor rose again and said, but can you justify how you got to that, please? Nothing. Let me just point something out. First of all, we were not defendants in this case. We were applicants. We applied to the court to have these restrictions lifted. That makes us applicants, not defendants. Furthermore, Paul Golding has never pleaded guilty to any offence, let alone the one of wearing a political uniform. So not only did she not explain how they made that decision, but she actually gave a false account of something that she believed had happened in the past, that she obviously was aware of, and that had swayed her opinion. Look, let's just make this very clear. These three people look like your typical left-wing middle class. They had made their decision before they'd even heard any of the points, the legal aspect of this case that our solicitor put forward. All of the legal points got totally ignored. These were people pleasers. They made their decision based on political bias, and it was an absolute outrage. I mean, I was absolutely disgusted. There were people who were watching this hearing and they came out and they were disgusted. Our solicitor was furious because, let me just say, as someone who worked in the legal profession for many years and studied law for many years, I was so utterly disappointed to see just a total disregard for the fine British legal system that we have. It just totally disregarded the law and made the decision based on political bias. So, this is where we are with this, and of course, we're not willing to just leave this here. So, We are taking some steps to move forward with this issue and not leave it as it is, which is, you know, ridiculous. It means that Paul and I can't go out on Saturdays. We're stuck in our properties. It's crazy. And we don't want this for Britain First. So we've got a meeting lined up with our legal representation, and we are going to discuss taking this matter to the High Court to ask a judge to consider the legal points that weren't considered by these magistrates. Consider the legal points and lift all of these conditions. We don't want any of them. We think that they are all unnecessary, they are all disproportionate. So we've got this meeting lined up. I have to say, at this stage, it's not looking great on a few levels. It's going to cost at least £10,000 to get us into the High Court. And this couldn't have come at a worse time, given that Paul Golding is planning on standing in the London mayoral campaign, in the London mayoral elections. We have a lot of fundraising to do for that campaign. We have to get all of the signatures and the paperwork in. We've only got 5 weeks to do that. And within that time, we need to raise £10,000 to get all of that in. So, of course, you know, again, it begs the question whether this was done intentionally. Bedfordshire Police seem to be very calculated in their decision making, and this does make me wonder whether this is an attempt to just scupper us on a financial level so that we cannot contest these elections. But nevertheless, what we are looking at, we will be discussing with our legal representation, is if we can get this into the High Court. It will cost at least £10,000 to do that, and I know many of you have donated this far, and we are so grateful for everything everyone has given. And of course, if you can donate, you know, that would be superb. You can do so over the phone or on our website, which is britainfirst.org. You know, worst case scenario is that we go into the High Court, and of course, Bedfordshire Police will be using our money, taxpayers' money, to pay for their legal representation. So I'm sure they won't be sparing any costs to save you lovely people any money. So really, if we lost that case, we could be looking at paying their costs, and it, you know, it's scuppering us. So we're going to speak to our legal representatives. It isn't looking fantastic at the moment, but we've got to look what's best for the movement. We're going to speak with them. We will update you all further as soon as we have any news. Of course, once we've got their advice, we will hold a leadership meeting, and then we will come back to you and let you know how we are going to take our movement. Britain First is a huge family. It's an ever-growing movement. It's a household name, and many of you watching this are a part of it. And you know, we're very grateful for your support and your membership, and your generosity in many instances. So let's look after our movement. Let's make sure that we take this forward in the right way, and we will let you know as soon as we have any further updates.